The interstellar war was over, and survival seemed impossible. But one human had defied the odds. Now, the galaxy's most powerful alien queen looked upon him with a gaze that carried both respect and an unspoken bond. In a universe where courage, luck, and cosmic humor collide, no one could predict what would come next. The hum of the starship's engines vibrated through the floor panels in a way that made even the toughest soldiers shift uncomfortably. And yet it had nothing on the strange smell of burnt plasma and burnt toast that lingered in the corridors, a reminder that someone somewhere had tried to cook breakfast mid-battle. Commander Ryland, human, fortyish, and perpetually bewildered by alien technology, leaned against a railing, staring at the panoramic view of the debris field below. Twinkling shards of destroyed fighters and crumpled satellites rotated lazily in the vacuum, like celestial confetti that nobody had bothered to sweep up. Somewhere in the distance, the remains of an enemy dreadnought drifted, its hull pockmarked with holes that looked like someone had gone at it with a cosmic cheese grater. Ryland scratched the back of his neck, muttering under his breath, "Well, at least they tried." The alien fleet, elegant in design and terrifying in potential, had been a marvel to behold. Sleek, elongated ships with smooth, reflective surfaces had danced through space with the grace of predators hunting prey, their plasma cannons tracing arcs of blue fire like ribbons in zero gravity. Ryland, by contrast, had piloted a ship that looked like a recycled cargo container, painted red and armed with what amounted to fireworks on loan from a particularly paranoid fireworks factory. Somehow, by what he could only assume was a combination of luck, incompetence on the enemy's part, and the occasional cosmic intervention, he had survived. More than survived, actually, he had won. The first real sign of humor in the aftermath came from one of the alien scouts, a small, angular creature with 6 eyes and a tendency to twitch nervously at anything moving. The scout drifted into view on Ryland's sensors, blinking frantically. Its communication protocol involved a series of squeaks and chirps, which, translated roughly, meant, "We admit defeat." "You are very irritatingly effective, human." Ryland frowned. "I think that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me," he muttered aloud. Not that the aliens were entirely devoid of decorum. The Queen, their leader, had been present at the final confrontation, hovering above the battlefield on a platform that defied gravity and, apparently, conventional sense. She was magnificent, green-skinned, tall, her long ears brushing the edges of her flowing blonde hair in a way that suggested the laws of physics had signed a peace treaty just to accommodate her. Her eyes glowed faintly, like twin emerald lanterns, and when she spoke, even the gravest of alien generals paused to take careful notes on the cadence and choice of words. And yet, for all her elegance and lethal command, she had a sense of humor that caught even Ryland by surprise. During the fight, she had quipped over the comms, "Do your humans always stumble into victory, or is this a special occasion?" Ryland, flying blind through a storm of enemy fire, had shouted back, "We prefer style over accuracy," a line he would later regret, though it had made several alien soldiers laugh quietly in their cockpits. The battle itself had been absurdly chaotic. Ryland remembered firing what he thought was a precision torpedo, only to discover it had ricocheted off an asteroid, hitting a supply ship in such a spectacular manner that it caused the alien fleet to spin in a synchronized, if unintended, dance. "Yes, I meant to do that," he had told his first officer, though her expression suggested otherwise. Debris had rained down, alarms had blared in erratic symphonies, and Ryland had somehow ended up at the center of the final confrontation with the Queen's flagship. Both sides had suffered losses, but the human side had lost far fewer ships than anyone had expected, mainly because the aliens, as it turned out, were distracted by Ryland's inexplicable ability to survive everything. Now, in the aftermath, the starfield outside the observation deck seemed almost peaceful, except for the occasional drifting wreck that looked suspiciously like it was waving at him. Ryland rubbed his eyes and shook his head. He wasn't sure if victory should feel more triumphant, or if he should just be grateful he hadn't tripped on a loose panel and accidentally fired the ship's backup lasers into his own hull. The Queen appeared suddenly, stepping out from the shadows of the platform behind him. Her presence was commanding, of course, but there was a casualness to the way she moved that suggested she wasn't entirely convinced the human was worth all the fuss. "You survived," she said, voice smooth as liquid metal. "I expected less." There was a hint of amusement in her tone, a spark that made Ryland glance down at his boots to check if he was somehow on fire. "Survival is a talent," he said, shrugging, though he suspected it was more luck than skill. "Also, I think the universe owes me breakfast, or maybe a medal." The Queen arched an eyebrow, the movement sending a ripple through her long, golden hair. "Medals are human customs, yes. We prefer quiet acknowledgement or something that won't explode in your face." She smiled faintly, and the sight was disarming in its unexpected warmth. Ryland wasn't sure if she was genuinely amused or if he was about to be vaporized for bad manners, but he decided to assume amusement, an assumption that was usually safer than the alternative. They drifted toward a quieter chamber, the observation deck falling behind them like the lingering echo of a fireworks display. Ryland found himself sneaking glances at the Queen as she moved. Her skin shimmered softly under the artificial lights, and her long ears twitched with a subtle, feline curiosity. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who had survived countless crises, yet there was a gentle rhythm to her movements that suggested patience, and perhaps a small enjoyment of watching him fumble through alien etiquette. Ryland's mind wandered, because it always did at moments like this. He tried to calculate the odds of surviving the war versus the odds of surviving an awkward dinner with an alien queen. Both seemed perilous. "So, do you often place fleets at risk just to see if humans can accidentally win?" he asked, attempting casual humor, though his voice wavered slightly. The Queen chuckled, a sound that seemed almost musical in the quiet chamber. "Accidentally, no, deliberately, occasionally. Humans are unpredictable and amusing." She paused, tilting her head, her long ears catching the light. "Your methods are unorthodox but effective. Perhaps we should record them as a study. Or a warning, I'm undecided." Ryland nodded seriously, because that was apparently how one responded to interstellar royalty when they made enigmatic statements. "I'll take either," he said, "though I suspect the warning might get lost in translation. Also, do you have snacks? War makes one hungry, you know." The Queen's smile broadened, and for a moment Ryland felt as though the weight of the entire galaxy had lifted from his shoulders. It was, he realized, one of the strangest victories he had ever achieved. Alive, victorious, slightly bewildered, and in the presence of a green-skinned, blonde-haired alien queen who found his survival both baffling and entertaining. And yet, even in this quiet chamber, with humor softening the edges of triumph, Ryland knew the universe wasn't finished with him. Battles might have been won, but stories, especially interstellar ones, had a tendency to grow, twist, and reveal absurd complications when you least expected them. He wondered if he should be nervous, or simply accept that cosmic absurdity had a sense of humor, and apparently it had chosen him as the punchline. Outside, the debris of war continued to drift lazily, stars winking in indifferent amusement, and somewhere, a salvage drone hummed as it carefully catalogued wreckage, apparently confused about why one human had survived every conceivable catastrophe. Ryland took a deep breath, trying to summon dignity, which mostly resulted in him coughing softly. The Queen raised a delicate eyebrow, her long ears twitching in what might have been amusement or sympathy. "Do you always get away with things by tripping into them?" she asked, and Ryland paused. The question, though simple, held a strange gravity. "Mostly," he admitted, "though I do like to think I add flair." A small laugh escaped her lips, light and musical. "Then flair it shall be," she said, and for the first time Ryland realized that victory didn't always have to be loud, nor did it require ceremony. Sometimes, it was just a shared laugh in the middle of improbable survival, a human who stumbled through chaos, and a queen who appreciated both the bravery and the absurdity of it. And so, in the quiet hum of a starship hovering above a battlefield strewn with wreckage, with the stars indifferent witnesses and cosmic debris floating like confetti, the first chapter of their story came to a close, not with fireworks, nor with pomp, but with the soft, improbable, and utterly human sound of laughter. Ryland awoke to the faint vibration of the starship's engines, a hum that felt less like machinery and more like the nervous purring of an enormous, invisible cat. Somewhere above, the artificial sun of the observation deck cast a soft glow, highlighting the polished surfaces of alien metal that seemed to breathe with a subtle life of their own. He sat up, rubbing his temples, and immediately noticed that the ship felt suspiciously empty. Not in the everyone disappeared into the void sense, but in the quiet enough to hear your own thoughts, which is terrifying sense. His first thought was that he had accidentally triggered some kind of alien meditation protocol. But no, there was only the faint, persistent smell of burnt toast. He suspected the replicator was still trying to figure out what a human breakfast entailed without accidentally igniting the antimatter core. As he swung his legs over the side of the bed, a bed that inexplicably floated 3 inches above the floor, he noticed a small blinking hologram projected from the control panel. It was the Queen's emblem, a stylized spiral that suggested both elegance and a mild warning about things best left unexploded. A soft chime accompanied the image, and Ryland frowned. If this is another lecture on why humans are dangerous to themselves and others, I already know, he muttered. The hologram shifted, and a voice emerged, smooth and melodic, laced with amusement. "Commander Ryland," it said, "I hope your sleep was adequate. We have matters of protocol to discuss." Ryland squinted. "Protocol?" he asked aloud. "Do you mean like uniforms and paperwork, or more like interstellar tax forms?" The Queen's eyes appeared in the projection, green and glowing faintly, her blonde hair drifting as if underwater. "Something like both, and neither. Mostly neither," she replied. "Also, congratulations on surviving. That is still remarkable." She paused, and Ryland noticed the faint twitch of one long ear, a subtle indicator of amusement or possibly judgment. "Please come to the central chamber. There is much to sort out." Ryland rubbed his eyes again and considered the logistics. The last time he had gone to a chamber with the Queen, he had survived a war, narrowly avoided a diplomatic incident, and accidentally knocked over a delicate alien sculpture that emitted a tiny, hysterical squeal when it hit the floor. "Well," he muttered, "at least I'm consistent." He wandered through the corridors, noticing for the first time the ship's curious design. The walls shifted slightly as he passed, almost imperceptibly, like they were sighing in relief that he hadn't yet triggered a meltdown. Lights followed him in a soft, choreographed pattern, as though the ship itself had a sense of humor, or perhaps it was merely entertained by his presence. At one point, he accidentally leaned on a control panel, activating a holographic map of the galaxy. He squinted at it. "Wait, are those explosions on the map yesterday's or last week's?" He tapped the panel. Nothing happened. The universe was apparently indifferent. When he entered the central chamber, the Queen was already there, seated with perfect poise atop a raised platform that seemed almost to hover. Around her, a handful of her advisors drifted lazily, each of them green-skinned, blonde-haired, and long-eared like her, though slightly shorter and less luminous. They observed him with mild curiosity, as if he were an unusual specimen in a laboratory. "Ah," said the Queen, rising with the grace of someone who had rehearsed her movements for centuries, "the human arrives. We were beginning to suspect you had taken permanent residence in your quarters." "Not yet," Ryland replied, trying for casual humor while silently praying that gravity remained operational. "Though I was considering it. They have breakfast." He gestured vaguely at the room, which contained no visible replicators or kitchens. A soft laugh echoed through the chamber, surprisingly musical for someone who had just led a fleet in battle. "You have questions, Commander, and you are amusing. Very well. Breakfast is complicated, but you may have nourishment shortly. For now we discuss matters of recognition." Recognition, Ryland thought, sounded like a euphemism for some alien equivalent of a medal ceremony, or a lecture, or a trap. He nodded politely because nodding seemed safest. The Queen motioned and a small device floated toward him, a thin, translucent cylinder with a faintly glowing ring inside. It pulsed gently like a heartbeat. "This is a token," she said. "It signifies the respect and trust of my people, of me." Ryland stared at it. "Is it edible?" he asked, because humor was safer than panicking outright. "Definitely not," the Queen replied, her tone dry, a faint twitch of amusement at the corner of her lips. "It is meant to be worn, on your finger." She lifted her hand gracefully and extended it toward him, her long ears brushing the light in a way that made the gesture look ceremonial and casual at the same time. Ryland, trying to maintain dignity while standing in front of someone who could probably vaporize him with a thought, extended his hand. "Right," he said. "Finger it is. Not my ear, not my nose, definitely not my foot. Finger." The Queen smiled, a small curve of lips that suggested she found his antics endearing, or at least mildly ridiculous. She placed the ring on his finger with surprising delicacy, and it settled with a quiet click. "There," she said. "You now carry a symbol of our respect and our amusement. It is important to balance both." Ryland flexed his hand experimentally, feeling the weight of the ring. It was warm, faintly humming with alien energy and somehow reassuring. "I feel fancy," he said, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. The Queen arched an eyebrow, her long ears flicking as if she considered correcting him but decided against it. "Yes," she said finally, "fancy and alive. Both are valuable." With that settled, the chamber shifted subtly. Walls rippled, creating a panoramic view of the surrounding stars, planets, and the distant remnants of the battlefield. "You will accompany me on a tour," she announced, "of the fleet and of our records. You will learn about the complexity of our operations, and you may also learn not to trip over things, preferably not in front of important dignitaries." Ryland nodded, internally preparing for whatever absurdity awaited him. He suspected it would involve floating corridors, mildly judgmental alien scholars, and at least one instance of him pressing the wrong button and causing an entire section of the fleet's history database to display as a musical holographic comedy. As they moved through the corridors, Ryland observed more of the alien technology. Panels floated gently in midair, humming with an intelligence that seemed almost sentient. Lights shifted to accommodate their movement, and holographic projections appeared at intervals to display schematics of battles, fleet movements, and occasionally, diagrams of Ryland himself, annotated with what appeared to be the alien equivalent of human. Dangerously effective, unpredictable, slightly amusing. He coughed lightly. "I see I'm already famous," he said, more to himself than to anyone else. The Queen glanced at him, a faint smile playing at her lips. "Fame is a curious thing," she said. "You will find it comes with responsibility and occasionally embarrassment. Both are unavoidable when one survives against improbable odds, and in your case, humor is recommended. Very much recommended." Ryland tried to imagine what kind of responsibility could follow surviving a war entirely by accident and occasionally making enemy admirals sigh in frustration. "I will try," he said. "Though I cannot promise dignity. That tends to escape me at inconvenient times." The Queen's laugh, soft and lilting, echoed again. "We have already established your eccentricities. I believe we can work with them, or at least endure them." Their tour continued, a slow drift through the heart of the fleet. Ryland observed ship after ship, noting with fascination the elegance of alien engineering, the subtle humor in certain design choices, and the odd comfort of knowing that no matter how alien the technology, some things, like the universe's tendency toward absurdity, were universal. He found himself chuckling quietly at the annotations in the holograms, which included things like human tendency to exaggerate gestures and unexpected survival, remarkable. By the time they reached the observation deck again, Ryland felt a sense of calm that was almost surreal. The stars outside seemed to wink knowingly at him, and the distant wreckage of the battlefield floated like glittering confetti in the void. The Queen stood beside him, long ears catching the light blonde hair drifting like liquid gold and green eyes glowing softly. She gestured at the view. "This," she said, "is the result of bravery, miscalculation, and a peculiar human stubbornness. You are part of it now for better or worse." Ryland nodded solemnly, then added, "Mostly worse, I suspect, but at least amusing, yes." The Queen's small, musical laugh answered him, a sound that seemed to mingle with the hum of the ship and the distant twinkle of stars. Somewhere in the quiet absurdity of victory, Ryland realized that this improbable mix of danger, humor, and interstellar diplomacy was only the beginning. And in that realization, as the two of them stood side by side, he felt the faint thrill of adventure, the comforting weight of the ring on his finger, and the undeniable certainty that the universe, in all its vast, ridiculous complexity, had a sense of humor, and he had just survived its punchline. Ryland awoke to the familiar hum of the starship, though this time it felt different. Less like the nervous purring of a giant cosmic cat and more like a contented murmur, a ship finally at ease after surviving chaos. The debris field outside the observation deck had thinned. Many wrecks had been salvaged, others drifted harmlessly into the void. The stars glimmered sharply, indifferent and eternal, as if they had witnessed countless victories and defeats and found amusement in all of them. Ryland stretched, flexing the ring on his finger, feeling its quiet warmth pulse in rhythm with the ship itself. Somehow, after surviving interstellar battles, dodging alien diplomacy, and making a fool of himself repeatedly, he felt competent, or at least less incompetent than yesterday. The Queen appeared silently behind him, as if the ship had carried her there personally. Her green skin glimmered softly in the light, and her long ears twitched subtly with an elegance that no human could replicate. Her blonde hair floated faintly, gravity refusing to impose itself where she chose it not to. She looked at him with a mild expression that seemed to balance curiosity, amusement, and a hint of pride. "You slept longer than expected," she remarked, the sound of her voice a gentle ripple against the hum of the engines. "I needed it," Ryland admitted. "Also, sleep in zero-G is trickier than it looks. Very few interstellar bed frames account for sudden moral crises." He rubbed his eyes and glanced at the starfield beyond the glass. "And besides, I think the stars were judging me." "They are indifferent," the Queen said lightly, "though your antics seem to entertain them. Perhaps that is why they allowed you to live." She paused, then raised a long, elegant hand. "Come, there is a matter that requires closure." Ryland followed her, the corridors now familiar, yet still alien enough to make him feel that he was walking through a dream built from physics and whimsy. Walls shifted subtly as they passed, soft hums accompanying each movement, almost as if the ship were whispering, "Be careful, he's unpredictable but interesting." When they arrived at the central chamber, he was struck by how different it looked from the first time. Now it carried the weight of calm and resolution, not just the sterile glow of post-battle nerves. Holographic projections of fleet movements, battle aftermath, and interstellar maps rotated gently, narrating the war in silent detail. Ryland couldn't help but grin. "I have to say this is much nicer when nobody's trying to kill me." The Queen's lips curved in a faint smile. "Yes, the war is over. What remains are consequences, rewards, and reconciliations." She gestured at a nearby console where several alien delegates hovered awkwardly, some of them blinking multiple times in a synchrony Ryland found unnerving. "They have waited to express gratitude." and questions. Ryland cleared his throat, prepared for a lecture, a trap, or possibly a ceremonial explosion. Questions, huh? I'm fairly well practiced at answering poorly, but I'll try. The delegates stepped forward. One, taller and thinner than the others, produced a floating orb that projected a miniature starship hologram. Your methods were unconventional, human, it said. Explain how a single human managed to alter the outcome of the engagement without apparent planning or adherence to strategy. Ryland paused, considering. Well, he began, adopting the careful tone one uses when explaining why a kitchen fire didn't destroy a building. It's mostly about luck, timing, and occasionally yelling a lot. He gestured vaguely at the ring on his finger. Also, I have this. It helps. The delegates blinked, some synchronously, some not. There was a murmur, not unpleasant, which Ryland interpreted as alien laughter or confused awe. The Queen raised her hand, and silence settled over the chamber like a soft blanket. Commander Ryland, she said, your humility is notable, and your humor invaluable. You have demonstrated qualities beyond mere survival. Courage, unpredictability, and the ability to endure absurdity. That is not small. Ryland shifted awkwardly. I endure absurdity because it never shuts up, he said. It just keeps coming, one punchline at a time. He realized he sounded like a philosopher or a very tired jester, but the Queen didn't flinch. In fact, she nodded, her long ears tilting thoughtfully. Indeed, she said. And now we move to recognition of a more personal nature. She reached into her pocket with deliberate care, producing a ring of simple, elegant design, its metal gleaming faintly with the energy of stars. Ryland's eyes widened. Wait again, he asked, though he was mostly incredulous in a good way. This, she said softly, is not a mere token of war or protocol. It is a symbol of respect, of shared trials, and of understanding. I place it upon you to acknowledge not only your actions, but who you have become through them. Ryland swallowed. He could feel the quiet gravity in the moment, and yet the absurdity of a green-skinned, long-eared, blonde-haired alien queen kneeling slightly to place a ring on his finger made him want to laugh and cry at the same time. Right, he said finally. Finger only, I presume. Not the nose, ears, or please don't tail if you have one. The Queen smiled, a musical, soft sound that seemed to fill the chamber with warmth. She placed the ring carefully, and it settled with a quiet, decisive click. Ryland flexed his hand experimentally, feeling the pulse of energy flow gently through him. He realized he was changed, not in some dramatic superhero sense, but fundamentally, subtly. He had survived impossible odds, earned trust across species, and learned to navigate absurdity without losing himself. He was more confident, yet still humble, braver, yet aware of his limits, funnier, though he still questioned whether his humor was good or merely tolerated. The chamber shifted again, the walls revealing a panoramic view of the galaxy beyond, a mosaic of stars, planets, and distant nebulae. This, the Queen said, gesturing to the cosmos, is what remains after conflict, understanding, trust, and connection. You are now part of it. Your story will be remembered, not merely for your victory, but for the courage, humor, and humanity you brought to the endeavor. Ryland nodded, staring at the stars. I suppose, he said slowly, that surviving isn't just about not dying. It's about noticing the funny parts along the way. He grinned, and sometimes wearing shiny rings. The Queen laughed softly. Indeed, and may you continue to notice them wherever the universe leads you. They drifted to the observation deck, side by side. Ryland glanced at the fleet now assembled in orbit, ships gleaming, crews preparing for peace rather than battle. There were minor repairs, diplomatic negotiations, and the occasional alien bureaucrat grumbling over how long humans took to do anything efficiently. Ryland smiled. He could handle that. He had survived worse. Commander, the Queen said finally, her long ears twitching in amusement, you are free to leave, but I suspect you will choose to remain in some capacity. Curiosity and humor are valuable assets in our fleets, you see. I think, Ryland replied thoughtfully, that depends on whether the universe has more punchlines for me. He looked at the stars again, then at her, and added, and whether you have more rings. She chuckled, the sound echoing like light through the chamber. We shall see. Perhaps more rings, perhaps more chaos. Both are inevitable. Ryland nodded, flexing the newly placed ring, feeling the pulse of connection, not only with her, but with everything he had endured, survived, and learned. He realized he was not the same man who had stumbled into battle blindly. He was stronger, wiser, and infinitely more capable of seeing the humor and meaning in even the most improbable situations. And somehow, that seemed like victory enough. Outside, the stars continued to wink, indifferent yet somehow approving, as the human and the alien queen stood together, marking the end of one journey and the beginning of another, one that promised adventure, laughter, and the quiet, enduring glow of trust forged in the fires of absurd interstellar warfare. Ryland smiled, feeling the pulse of the ring and the universe alike. Somehow, against every odd, he had survived, and he had found connection, respect, and a touch of cosmic absurdity that made the impossible feel comfortably real. And so, in the quiet hum of the ship, amidst the gentle glow of alien technology and the stars beyond, Ryland took a deep breath, straightened his posture, and stepped forward, ready to meet whatever the universe decided to throw at him next, knowing that he was no longer just a survivor. He was a participant, a friend, and a bearer of stories, laughter, and courage across galaxies.